There were ways to cause the machine to like freeze and lock up so that no one else could play on it, and this would cause actual fights.
You're tuned into Bite Sides to Nerdy with Amanda Teo. This is the podcast where we aim to serve you just a taste of the fandoms and franchises our guests are just simply obsessed with. Whether you're here to gush over your faves or simply looking for something new, we're just so excited to have you. So sit back, relax, and let's get nerdy. Neon lights, blasting music, crowds of people, cries of anguish, or cheers of victories. There are very few places that describe this kind of world. But if we look back just a couple of decades, these are the places you and your friends just had to be, at least when you were a kid.
Hi, I'm Tone, gamer, streamer, archivist, and today we're talking about arcade gaming throughout the 90s. People mostly know video games for being at-home experiences, but throughout the 80s and 90s, there's actually places where you could go to play video games outside of your home, which is kind of like a crazy thought now, but back in the day, they were extremely prevalent, and arcade machines used to be in all kinds of places, such as laundromats, restaurants, even grocery stores. It was like you couldn't go somewhere without tripping over an arcade machine. It was pretty wild. It gained prevalence roughly around mid to late 80s. It actually dates back to even before that, but arcade culture, as many know it, dates back to roughly around mid-80s, and actually continued all the way through the end of the 90s into the early 2000s, and in some places still persists to this day, while in some places it kind of petered out around the mid-2000s. What makes the arcade genre so fascinating is that you could find a bunch of different things if you went to an arcade. In dedicated areas, you had multiple genres such as puzzle, fighting, simulation, classic action platforming kind of games. But if you were to go to other areas, some of these areas would have a focus on certain other genres such as like simply fighting or simply old school puzzle and platformers. I think what makes the 90s stand out so immensely is that there were a lot of innovations going on at the time, such as 3D polygonal models, the integration of bringing your data from home to bringing it to the arcade, and vice versa, and light gun shooting games where you could shoot into screens, motorized games where you could actually move around and be moved by your game while you were playing and stuff like that. There's like a crazy amount of things that the 90s did, especially on behalf of Sega and SNK.
But how exactly did Tone get into this style of gaming as a kid? What makes going to the arcade so special for him?
As a kid, it's hard to like save up and get all these new fancy consoles and stuff, but if you've got a quarter, you can play. That was like the only bar to entry. What also made video games and arcades so interesting back then was they were places for kids to hang out. You know, if it was off season for sports, you could hang out with your friends, grab a few quarters that you would have probably been using for lunch or something, saved up allowance. Or if you were waiting for your mom to finish errands, they'd be like, hey mom, can I go get some quarters? I want to go play some Street Fighter. This is a thing that really you could have done at the time. It was crazy. I'm old enough to remember when Sega's Virtual Fighter came out and like all their other virtual games that ran on like their specialized 3D boards. Just think of having like the super blocky looking Legend of Zelda or Super Mario from the 80s, right? And then all of a sudden 1993 hits and you got people in full-blown 3D. And it's actually not the first time games have experimented with 3D, but you had like human-like polygon figures on this gigantic 52-inch screen blasting loud music in the arcade, and it's just, you knew you were in the future. It was crazy. I think the other highlight is video games, or arcade games rather, are interesting social vehicles where these kids, because they get together, if you have a game that brings them back, this is a way that they can socialize. And I think one memory in particular I was at like a Chuck E. Cheese or a kids amusement center, and I jumped on this 4-player Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, and there were 3 other kids that were playing there. And we had this little moment because the 4 of us were trying to come together to beat the game. None of us knew each other, but we were all like squatted up. And one of the kids' dads, he just kept putting coins into the machine to help keep the whole entire squad alive. And me and these 3 other random strange kids, we just came together, saw the ending, we were like all high-fiving at the end, and it was like really cute and wholesome, and it's something that's stayed with me ever since.
While everything sounds fun and exciting, there are some downsides when adrenaline runs high.
If you weren't the kind of person that wanted to play dirty or like lock down your opponent and play with some really unfair advantage, this actually started genuine fistfights in the arcades. It was like really funny seeing someone get punched out because they just could not fight back. And this is like a weird thing of arcade culture that like probably only the people who were there remember. One fun example is if you've ever seen the anime or manga High Score Girl, they have scenes of the main character rolling around, tussling on the ground with like other arcade goers, and you're thinking, oh, there's just no way this is real. No, it's very real. I know that in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, back in the day, there were ways to cause the machine to like freeze and lock up so that no one else could play on it, and this would cause actual fights.
As time goes on, it's unfortunate that arcades are not as prevalent as they were decades ago. But what keeps them alive? And should they just be relics of the past?
It's definitely a bygone era, I found. The fighting game heads and the rhythm heads, as that's what I'm particularly invested in. It's really cool to see how they try to keep that spirit alive by bringing in new blood, teaching them the ropes, and trying to keep that feeling of camaraderie, socialization, and friendship alive within both of their respective scenes. But it is so easy now to like go home, jump online, and play with a stranger. I think the best way to put it is something that was told to me forever ago by someone who owns one of my stomping grounds, which is arcades are important because they're places for people to just hang out and not be doing dumb things. It's a safe place for kids to go after school while they're waiting for their folks, and I know that. For many years, I was a latchkey kid. Both my parents worked, and they were young too, so they worked a lot. And sometimes the arcade was like my safe haven. You know, God forbid I ever got into a fight with anyone, where would I go to calm down? It would be at the arcade. Or like, where would I be to stay out of trouble? At the arcade. These places are a lot less common now, and it's really unfortunate because I can attest to that. There are many kids who used to hang out at the arcade back when I was in primary school, early secondary school, at the arcade at the mall, or there's a guy who tried to run a gaming lounge in town near me who was like, yeah, without arcades and stuff like that, where are the kids gonna go? Either go straight home, but what if they can't go straight home because their parents are out and where they were working, you know, they don't got a key and they're too young, you know? Throughout the mid-2000s, probably 2010s, there was that push to get kids outside and physical. And now there's a lot of parenting styles in modern times where they want to keep a much closer watch on their kids. And I feel like arcades are kind of like that happy medium, especially with technology advancing that allows for more physical oriented play. Not to say that there's horseplay going on and around, more so like actual full body movement and stuff in a controlled environment. And I think that concept of controlled environment is what probably appeals to like many modern audiences, especially parents who want to make sure that they can monitor what their kid's getting up to or like monitor what they're taking in. I think the big thing too is like what you're taking in. And again, arcades are kind of like, it's a nice controlled environment, especially with now with safety things and people wanting to make sure that there's cameras installed in like most places and stuff.
So what tactics should modern arcades try, especially when competing with home consoles?
I feel like if arcades were to make a comeback, I think they just kind of need to be more accessible. There's a lot that arcades kind of do already that is timeless and appealing. There's an arcade that opened not too far from me actually that offers crane games, they offer a bunch of other prize redemption games, and they offer actual like skill-based games to offer some variety instead of just redemption-based things, because I know the common complaint with classic arcade goers is that, you know, there's too many redemption-based games, there's not enough of the old school skill-based games or things that quote-unquote the hardcore gamers be into. I feel like modern arcades, they do have these things. They basically have everything set. Everything's lined up for the win. Just make these places way more common and way more accessible. People still go. Like, I was actually very happy to see that the place that opened near me, there was foot traffic. People wanted to come in. They're like, oh look, cute things to win, and prizes to get, and things to buy, and games to play, and oh cool, rhythm games. So it's like a little something for everyone. And I think that's the biggest thing is arcades always had a little something for everybody. That is one of the reasons why gaming lounges kind of struggle is that they cater to gamers, but gamers have their options at home, and there's always the classic meme of, why go out when we have this at home? I think what sets gaming lounges and arcades apart is that arcades offer a more comprehensive experience. If you want to win a prize, if you want to see a bunch of flashing lights, if you want to play a game, if you want to play an easy game, you know, arcades kind of nail all of that. And they're typically, you know, either all ages friendly, so you can even bring your kids, or some arcades even cater to like a more casual older crowd, so you can have like a nice place to unwind even as an adult. I do respect that the gaming lounge tries to also keep the it's a safe place to be and it's a place to stay out of trouble mentality. I will always appreciate and champion that. But what else are you doing to make people want to spend more time there compared to, say, at home or anywhere else? You know what I mean?
Now, I'm sure you're hyped and ready to run to your closest arcade. What are Tone's advice for you when you go on your own adventure? If
you want to get into a classic arcade experience, they do exist, and actually there's a couple different places that are trying to bring these places back. I'm talking like rows of machines and stuff like that, and just that nice neon environment, and I feel like they should gain a little more traction. They should have a stronger marketing because they do exist and they're really cool, and as long as you know where to look, they are there. I think the biggest thing too is if you go arcading, definitely bring a friend, because there's nothing like the feeling of going shoulder to shoulder, running through a game, and smashing that last boss with a homie. It is one of the funnest things, I think, about gaming.
And if you want to continue the conversation?
As always, any criticisms, comments, concerns, You can find me while I stream at aki_tone. The underscore is important, just like the hyphen in Spider-Man. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Blue Sky. I'm also available on YouTube. Shoot me a message through there or comment on one of my playthrough videos. Yeah, let's go continue the conversation.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Bite Sized and Nerdy with Amanda Teo. Did you enjoy your happy helping of fun facts? Or do our guests have info that they need to retract? Make sure to let us know down in the comments. In the meantime, thanks for dropping by, and we can't wait to see you next time.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you didn't know, Bite Sized and Nerdy is one of our pilot podcast series in a documentary style focused on interviewing fans and their obsessions. If you're interested in hearing more, be sure to like and subscribe to see all of our future projects. In the meantime, we will be uploading a new podcast every Friday at 12 p.m. PDT. So until then, bye-bye!